Well, I mean, there are some indication that it may be a terror attack. Obviously, this is an attack methodology that is particularly prevalent among ISIS sympathizers, a vehicular attack on a large gathering of people. It was timed with the beginning of the Munich Security Conference, or at a fairly neuralgic event in Germany. And there have been some apparently Islamist postings of the individual prior to the attack. However, the investigation is still ongoing. It is nevertheless noteworthy that the Special Prosecutor for Extremism and Terrorism of Bavaria has taken on the investigation, which means maybe there is not more detail being released right now, but more indications that this is actually a ideologically motivated terror attack.
There have been about 6 terror attacks in less than a year in Germany. Can you take us through some of them? And is there any indication about why this is happening with such frequency?
Well, I mean, Germany, as well as the rest of Europe, is of course in a very complex security situation since October 2023, the pogrom-like attack of Hamas against Israel. That ongoing conflict in the Middle East does radicalize both individuals within the Islamist milieu as well as the extreme left milieu, and of course leads to backlash from the extreme and violence-oriented right-wing milieu. In addition, we have both ISIL and Al-Qaeda operating in a situation outside Europe and the West, i.e. in Syria, in Afghanistan, and in Africa, under much less operational pressure than it was in the last 20 years, because international forces have withdrawn from all these conflict regions, which means we have a victory narrative that is circulating among these extremists, that they can defeat the Americans in Afghanistan, the French, the Europeans, and the UN in Africa, Russia and Iran in Syria, i.e. no one can stop them. And that is met by a social media environment where it is much easier now than it was in the past to post extremist and terrorist material, and the algorithms are electronically supporting radicalization process. That's why you had an unaffiliated Islamist attack in Mannheim with a knife. You had another knife attack in Solingen, which was linked to IS. You had a vehicular attack in Magdeburg, which was conducted by an anti-Islamist. You had a shooting attack in Munich in September last year by an Islamist on the anniversary of the Munich 1972 Olympic massacre, where the Israeli team was killed against the Israeli consulate general. You had a knife attack in Aschaffenburg by an Islamist in January, and now the vehicular attack today in Munich. So it's a very tense situation in Germany right now.
Absolutely. And what kind of an impact is this having on the people in Germany, on the community heading out and gathering in large numbers?
Of course, this creates a sense of insecurity exploited, as your piece just showed, by extreme populist parties, of course, playing fast and loose with the facts here. Of course, the individual was not scheduled for extradition from Germany, had a legal status in Germany. He was, despite earlier news, not known for being criminal, but actually for being a detective in as a witness for criminality, as a detective in a department store. But of course, each one of these attacks is misused to drive 10 days before the federal election on the 23rd of February, a very populist narrative. But clearly, of course, there needs to be reforms, both of the immigration system, of the legal mandates of the internal and external intelligence and security forces of Germany. But there also needs to be a revisiting of the way we accept that social media is earning billions of euros in Europe and billions of dollars across the world without having any legal obligation to proactively cooperate with security forces, something we expect from every other industry. Social media is the only one that is totally exempted from that obligation.
Given how close Germany is to an election, as you just mentioned, how significant of an issue do you think this and other terror attacks will be? You know, how significant do you think they'll be for voters as they head to the polls?
Well, I mean, internal security is now, of course, dominating the pre-election debate. It was supposed to be a debate on the economic difficulties that Germany has been experiencing since the unprovoked attack of Russia against Ukraine. But it is now really an election campaign on the issue of internal security, primarily on a better management of migration and extradition procedures in Germany. But of course, finally, now the Chancellor has also mentioned that in order to fight terrorism sustainably, we need to look very hard and very long and data protection measures, and the hamstrings that we put on the internal and external security services in Germany when it comes to investigating online behavior, because not only social life has moved online since COVID, also terrorist and extremist life has moved online. This is where attacks get propagated. This is where propaganda is spread, financing is done, communication happens online, as well as, of course, coordination of attacks. So the security services need the appropriate mandates to deal with these elevated security threats.
And just finally, this happened hours before an international security conference. Can you take us through who was in town for that and how it will be impacted by this event, do you think?
Well, this is the Munich Security Conference, a really global event in where many heads of states are going to attend, both the American Vice President, J.D. Vance, as well as the President of Ukraine, the German Chancellor, many heads of states from around Europe and across the world are going to attend. If heads of states don't attend, pretty much every government sends high-ranking ministers. So the interior of Munich, the center of Munich, is really a tight security zone. This demonstration, which included several hundred people, happened the day before the big event in Munich, while already other high-ranking meetings were going on in Munich, but it was unrelated to the Munich Security Conference because it relates to a dispute not unlikely the ones that you just reported on in Sydney. It's the public transport employees of Munich demanding higher wages. So that demonstration happened, of course, in the same week, but not connected to the Munich Security Conference.
Jakob Schindler from the Counter Extremism Project, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.